Hello, good afternoon. My name is Kevin Dumas, I'm town manager here in the great town of Mansfield, and thank you for those of you who have signed on today. In addition to article sponsors and our departments, we really appreciate the opportunity that you're here today for today's session. And today is purely, I'll call it just an extra. It's an opportunity that we started during COVID to provide a pre-town meeting overview of the things that will be discussed at town meeting, the actions that we're going to be asking for the folks who show up. And that's probably our number one point as we're starting off today. We need to make sure that we have you, residents of Mansfield. There needs to be 200 of you in order to be able to take the town business, which is so important. And so we ask that for today, you can follow along with us. For anybody who wants to see the specific motion language, right here on the screen, you can see below my blurb here, you see me speaking, under mansfieldma.com, right at the top of the screen under town notifications, on the upper right-hand side of the screen, it says special town meeting information. You give 2 clicks and you get into the details of town meeting, and you can see the final motions packet that's posted there, as well as the town meeting warrant. And you can be able to see the specific things that you'll see in the actual, it's a copy of the actual motions packet that's being printed right now for town meeting. So that'll be fantastic. So that's the business that we'll be taking up, and we'll get into the business of the night that'll be coming up this Thursday at Mansfield High School Auditorium for this fall special town meeting. We're really excited about that. So again, for those who'll be attending, thank you for your planned attendance. It's really important for us to take on the business and some of the things we're going to be focusing on during this town meeting. You see on the screen some budgetary adjustments. We'll talk about what those are. Some items for limited capital improvements, some pay down of existing debt, appropriation to town reserve funds, information relative to a school technology contract, the Mansfield High School boiler replacement project, some drainage easements and confirmatory takings for a bridge project, as well as Article 24, which will be for a citizen's petition. We'll get into that a little bit more as we go through today's discussion. And it's just important to note, as I do every year, that the town is performing well to budget to revenue, which is fantastic for fiscal 23. And again, fiscal 23 starts July 1st of each year. This was a July 1st, 22 started fiscal 23. And we're about halfway through at this point in time. The end of December will be true 6 months, but we're doing well. And also the fact that the town is committed to our financial policies, and certainly returning funds to stabilization and the such, which we have on an annual basis. We like to give updates, especially when it relates to certification of free cash. So this is a blurb that we put up every year. At the end of the year, which is June 30th for the town, once the books are closed and audited by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, they will certify available funds in the general fund, sewer enterprise, water enterprise, airport, and parking enterprise funds. So you can see on the screen that its annual free cash notice that came through to the town on September 12th was $3.7 million for the general fund. Also for the water and sewer enterprise fund, each at $1.6 million. Airport enterprise at $150,000, as well as the parking enterprise at $198,000. We also have something with an additional item that we have, which is an updated free cash. And this is recently, just as a couple of weeks ago, because we received an additional $301,417 in fiscal 23. So they made additional free cash available. It was unanticipated, but it's important because it's relative to Articles 11 and 12, which happen to do with the Attorney General's settlement of the opioid epidemic lawsuit, which funds will be coming to the town. So we'll be dealing with that dollar amount as well, and a little bit further on in tonight's presentation. So on the next page, it's the free cash usage that you see here in the screen. So the 2 free cash amounts that we just went over totals $4,025,000. And what's being requested from that at this town meeting on Thursday night, which will be the annual dollar amount that we set aside for the 5-year and 10-year cyclical valuations for the assessor, and that's $70,000. Some limited capital improvements of $723,000, some pay down of existing town debt of $422,000, town financial reserve funding of $926,000, interest on bonds to be paid of $138,000, and again, like I just mentioned, the creation and the establishment and appropriation into the opioid stabilization fund of $301,000. So the request on the screen totaled $2.5 million, which would leave remaining $1.444 million in additional free cash to be used for annual town meeting that will be coming up in May 2023. Again, you'll see from the sewer enterprise fund asking $700,000 to be put towards its reserve fund. And in the water enterprise fund right below it, you can see asking for $600,000 to its reserve fund and $150,000 transfer for the increased cost of chemicals that was not expected for fiscal 23, as well as two items for capital improvements. It's a pickup truck, which we'll get into, as well as some meters and meter readers for $105,000 total, and also some pay down of debt for $200,000 in the water enterprise fund. And then at the request of the Airport Commission, a transfer of $75,000 of their retained earnings to be able to go through and to be put aside into their building reserve fund. So on the next page, you'll see, again, just talking about our financial reserves, which is so important. You know, that the town stabilization fund, folks, has its highest balance ever at $5.201 million. Also, its highest amount in its other post-employment benefits. You may ask what that is, and that is the cost of the future retiree cost for current employees that someday will be retired. So total, we have set aside $11.4 million. This will be transferring an additional $280,000 per our policy, so that will be asked to be put aside. Also, it's going to be asked to transfer $196,000 for reserve for those accrued liabilities for compensated absences. So when people retire, amounts contractually that we owe them for the payout of sick and vacation time. So that dollar amount is being requested of $196,000, and we'll be back for future appropriations for both stabilization and the Special Education Reserve Fund. I mentioned at the start for the updated free cash amounts of the $301,000 that you see on your screen. This is two things are being established. One is the establishment of the new fund. So this is to set aside dollars that the town is going to be receiving over the next 16 and 17 years. And again, this is as a result of the Attorney General's settlement with the opioid manufacturers and distributors. So our plan is to begin utilizing some of those in fiscal 24. And again, that can only by law go towards the effects of the opioid epidemic. And Article 12 appropriates that money into the fund if it's set up under Article 11. Hopefully that's the case. But again, the Attorney General did a great job in being able to go through and to be able to make this a reality. So all municipalities in Massachusetts will be getting their proportionate share. Total over the life of the time of 16, 17 years, it'll be about $1.4 million that'll be coming towards Mansfield. I mentioned at the beginning of our presentation today, capital improvements. So we have a very robust plan. This is only a limited amount. So on the screen, you'll first start to see fire, water, and sewer. And so what's being requested for the fire department are the self-contained breathing apparatus, also referred to as the SCBA packs. And this is literally the packs that put on with the mask and provides the breathing apparatus for our firefighters and paramedics dealing with the scenes that they confront on a regular basis. They've exceeded their useful life, and for the whole department to be able to replace them is $370,000. In the water department, meters and readers for $60,000, as I previously mentioned, as well as a replacement pickup truck for $45,000. And then also for the sewer collection system, the maintenance for cleaning and relining of our sewer mains, we annually put aside $200,000 for that. And that's coming again, both of these items for water and sewer is coming from their retained earnings and their reserves. On the topic of Mansfield schools, Superintendent Teresa Murphy will be on in just a moment, and we'll be talking about the loan order for $1.8 million, which is going to be for the Mansfield High School boiler and hot water system replacement project. And as you can see on the screen, we're very fortunate that of that amount, the bids have come in, it's about $1.5 million total, but per the Mass School Building Authority, we have to ask for the entire dollar amount as the projected budget. That's why we're asking for the $1.8 million. And that's going to be reimbursed 52.89%, which is fantastic. It'll also be reimbursed for the next project, which is the second bullet under Mansfield Schools, which is $125,000 towards the schematic design. And this is for the building next door to the high school. This is for Qualtro's Middle School boiler and their hot water system replacement. That will be subject to future reimbursement from Mass Building Authority as well. However, just like we did for the high school a year ago, we asked for the dollars in cash to do for the schematic design. We've been invited into this project, and again, we will be fortunate enough to be able to go through and to receive its proportionate share of reimbursement as well, which is fantastic and certainly helps pay the associated costs of the project. And then lastly, $228,000 is being asked for, and that's going to be for the final design, equipment, and underground tank removal to support the Robinson School playground. So for those limited projects, we now go on particularly to talk about the Mansfield schools. And I know that Superintendent Teresa Murphy is here with us today. I'll ask that Superintendent Murphy, if you could please turn on your camera and turn on your microphone. There you are. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much, Mr. Dumas, for having this pre-town meeting. It gives me a chance to be able to preview what I'm going to be proposing to the community on Thursday evening. So first up is Article 5, Motion 1, and this is funding relative to the final design, equipment, and underground tank removal to support the Robinson School playground. I'm requesting $228,503 to build a playground on the east side of the Robinson School. It's currently a hardtop with no play structure. Now, understanding the costs of building playgrounds today, I am mindful of trying to keep this playground as reasonable as possible. The funds that I'm requesting today will provide for the final design, construction documents, and the removal of an underground oil tank that's no longer in use. The funds will allow us to do some cost-effective strategies, and that is to purchase the playground equipment this winter, which Mr. Dumas has suggested we store at the DPW until construction. Now, for comparison, for those of you who are listening and watching, the new playground, which is about to be opened up at Plymouth Street, was approximately $700,000. So because it's another couple of years, we're expecting Robinson to be a somewhat higher cost. But what we will do is we will go out to bid on construction and return to spring's annual town meeting with a request based on the bids we received. So we'll have more accurate numbers. So again, requesting the $228,503 for the final construction documents, final design, the removal of the underground tank, and purchase of the structure, the playground equipment. Article 15 is, as it says, funding relative to the schematic design and construction documents for the boiler and hot water system replacement at Walters Middle School. The school department has recently been invited into the Massachusetts School Building Authority, otherwise known as MSBA, the MSBA Accelerated Repair Program, and it's to replace the Walters Middle School boilers and hot water system. I'm requesting $125,000 for the schematic design and the construction documents for this project. QMS currently has 2 hot water boilers and 1 steam boiler that are over 30 years old. As it's an MSBA project, the reimbursement rate will be assigned once the project has MSBA board approval. Historically, in recent years, the school's reimbursement rate has exceeded 50%. Article 16 is funding relative for the replacement of the boiler and hot water system at Mansfield High School, which is 52.89% reimbursed from the Commonwealth. This request is also an MSBA accelerated repair project that has been approved by the MSBA board. It is for $1.8 million to replace the Mansfield High School boilers and hot water system. Currently, there are 2 MHS boilers, and they are over 30 years of age. They will be replaced by 3 high-efficiency boilers, And we're also looking to install 2 hot water tanks, which will produce and store the hot water. We're actually further along with this boiler project than the QMS project. Going back last fall and this past spring, residents approved funds for the schematic design and construction documents for MHS. We would then receive full approval from MSBA board for this project, and they will reimburse approximately 53% of the project. We'll be moving forward with construction with your vote of approval at town meeting. Before I move on to Article 17, I have one final comment related to the MSBA program. We are fortunate to have 2 MSBA projects underway to continue to make improvements in our schools. I give credit to Assistant Superintendent Ed Donahue for writing these grants, for Town Manager Kevin Dumas for his support of these proposals, for Facilities Director Matt Jacques for overseeing these projects, and for our school committee, Capital Improvement Program, Finance Committee, and Select Board for continuing to support us with this important work. MSBA recently announced to school districts that the accelerated repair program has been put on pause for now. This does not affect the QMS and MHS projects, but because it's been put on pause, we won't be writing any additional MSBA projects until that pause is over. So that's why I say the district and this town is fortunate to have these 2 boiler projects already in motion. Finally, Article 17 is related to the schools. It is language needed for school technology contracts for greater length than 36 months. The reason I'm asking to be allowed to enter technology contracts longer than 3, but not to exceed 6 years, is because it makes sense financially to align the lease contracts with the life of the equipment. So, for example, Chromebooks have a 6-year lifespan. So by contracting for a 5-year lease, financially it makes sense. And then we have a 1 year that's an off year. And similarly, with the smart boards, we are currently in year 1 of a 5-year lease contract. But as we anticipate a 10-year lifespan for the boards, we should have quite a few years when we are not paying the costs that we're paying today. So this is strictly for language that would allow us to enter into contracts for longer than 36 months, but again, would not exceed 6 years. With that, those are the issues pressing for the schools. I thank you, and I look forward to seeing you all on Thursday evening at Mansfield High School. Thank you.
Teresa, thank you so much, and thanks for the explanation on all of the articles. And I think it's always good just to be able to let the public know the fact that you and the assistant superintendent and all of the others, with the support of the school committee, the select board, all of our teams working together with our departments to make MSBA a reality. The things that you do by getting online and with your testimony and my testimony, making these things an opportunity for Mansfield, we're saving significant hundreds of thousands of dollars that otherwise, right, we would have to go and borrow for 10, 20, 30 years. And you guys do a great job with that. And thank you very much for your continued diligence with that. And it's always wonderful to hear you present. You put me to shame, Teresa. So it's always a pleasure to watch you go through and to present your items with us. I ask that at this point, you still stay on throughout the rest of the presentation. It may be a question on when we actually go through the language, but thank you. Nice job.
Thank you.
Sure. So moving on to the articles, folks, what you'll end up seeing here, articles 1 through 18, if you had a chance to be able to go pull up your motions packet, as you can see the little image on the screen, that's right on our website, mansfieldma.com, and go right up to the top section of the screen where it says special town meeting information. Click twice to get in. And then when you see inside, it's under supporting documentation or our motions. 1 through 18 are budgetary and financial in nature. And then articles 19 through 23 really contain drainage easements needed for town projects and a confirmatory taking, temporary and permanent for the Balcom Street Bridge replacement projects. And then of course, when we get to the point, I'll invite our guest today in regards to Article 24, which is a citizen's petition for an additional all alcohol retail license at a specific location in town. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. So particularly onto the motions, what we'll do is we're going to review the articles as presented in the motion packet. And when we get to the end of each one, I will ask Sharon, who is moderating this session for our virtual session tonight, and those who may be watching on Mansfield Cable, if there are any questions, I will ask you, Sharon, if there happens to be anybody with their hand raised or anybody that would like to be able to go through and to ask any question on a motion. So our first one is Article 1, Motion 1, and this is in regards to a supplemental appropriation in the amount that you see on the screen of $138,575. And this is because of the fact, I know that Mr. Lacasse is here, our Assistant Town Manager Finance Director. Barry, if you want to turn on your camera and your microphone, just to talk about a little bit about this motion, because this is a great opportunity for a great rate that you were able to get on some borrowings, and we'd have to pay some interest payments before June, but that this was a great job done by you and the team. So Barry.
Thank you, Kevin. As the town prepared to bond for $6 million, which was made up of 2 road bonds of $2 million each, $955,000 for school windows, $600,000 for the Plymouth playground, and $500,000 for a school security project, we recognized that the interest rates were on the rise. And so to put the town in the best position possible to get the lowest rate, we structured the bids for 15 years with 1 interest payment and due in FY23. This $138,000 represents the interest payment for FY23. As a result of that, we received a pretty low bid of 3.77%. And we think under the current climate, that was a pretty good interest rate to get. And so we're pretty happy with that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Barry. And
You're
so
welcome.
on the next, but you can be able to see that is the dollar amount. Again, $138,575, Article 1, Motion 1. Sharon, are there any questions on Article 1, Motion 1? Do you see any hands raised?
There is a hand raised, but not for this article.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sharon.
For later on. Okay.
So Article 1, Motion 2. This is what I had described earlier. This is $150,000 be appropriated from the Water Department retained earnings account to be funded into the Water Department's budget from their retained earnings due to the fact of the increased cost of chemicals. Do we see any hands for that, Sharon?
We do have 2 hands raised.
Okay.
So the first one, I'm going to ask Olivier to unmute. I unmuted you, Olivier. If you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, no, I actually missed the opportunity for the previous question. So is there not the flexibility to do the to move funds around to make that payment in the existing budget where actually what are we doing? We're starting paying back sooner than otherwise? I'm just trying to understand what the logic of that is, where that's coming from.
Opportunity. That's a good question. There was an opportunity. I'll just back up the slide just to go backwards for the 138,575. So Mr. Lacasse explained that the town went out for borrowing opportunity, and we work with a financial consultant and a financial advisor to be able to package the debt appropriately and get the best rate possible. And as part of doing that, it was recommended to be able to have an interest payment in fiscal 23. And in order to do that, that's the dollar amount that's reflected on the screen here. And you, if you had the opportunity to hear Mr. Lacasse's presentation, it was at less than 4% rate for the town for a significant borrowing. So at the advice of our financial advisor, we went through and structured the debt to be in this place. So this is just for an interest payment in fiscal 23. The rest of the debt begins in fiscal 24.
Okay, so had this not gone through, the payments would have started after the new fiscal year at a different rate.
That's correct. It would have ended up being starting in fiscal 24 instead of just an interest payment in fiscal 23.
Okay, and you didn't have the flexibility within the budget to move things around to be able to do that. You need to actually increase the budget that was voted on in May to make that happen.
Yes, and the reason why we're doing that is because we're leaving to make sure that we have the appropriate levels in our town-wide reserve fund for transfer that's with the Finance Committee, and that this provides the opportunity for some excess receipts that we have to be able to go through and to do it in this responsible manner.
Okay, all right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Kevin, we have 2 more questions.
Sure.
I'm going to ask Steve Schoenfeld to go ahead and ask his question.
Hi, Kevin, it's Steve Schoenfeld.
Hello.
Barry, can you provide town meeting with an exhibit showing the calculation rather than just putting something out there that says 138,000? In other words, show us, because when you look at this article but as it stands, it doesn't look like it is what you described. It looks like it's an increase to the budget, which would be considered a potential override. So if you wanted people to better understand, show what we passed in terms of debt finance, interest costs back in May, and show us the alternative, your proposal. Clearly, the lower interest rate is preferred. And it'd go a lot further for the audience to understand it than just saying, hey, give us 138,000 more from free cash.
Sure, I think we can modify the slide a little bit, Steve, to better clarify that.
Yeah, you gotta say, here's what you passed in May, and here's what we're gonna amend it. And you already explained the reason why. So just show the math between, and we can do 138, 575 in difference.
Sure,
All right, thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Okay, we have 1 more hand raised. Miss Sandra Levine, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you very much. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I am interested in the kind or amount of chemicals that has required 150,000 between now and next spring that we didn't account for. What's happening with the water department?
And that's a really good question. And with us here tonight, we have the Water Division Manager, Sean Precourt, with us here tonight, as well as our DPW Director, Josh Renke, who can answer that specifically for you. So
Thank
gentlemen,
you.
if you could turn on your microphones and you could turn on your cameras, that'd be great. Hello, Josh and Sean. Good evening. Welcome.
Hi there, thank you.
Sure. So Sean, if you could give a little explanation of the challenges that you found that were not known before we entered into fiscal 23 and now what's happened and why you're asking for the additional funds.
Hi, Sandy. Yeah, all those chemical increases are, for instance, if you want to get specific, the sodium hydroxide is up 118% over fiscal year 22. And that goes by Surge's bid. So that's up 118%. Our chlorine costs are up 88% from one year to the next, as well as our fluoride costs are up 93.7% from fiscal year 22 to 23.
So basically you're saying, Sean, that you didn't put extra into the coverage of chemicals. You knew, or the department knew, that prices were going to go up. The town knew, the people knew prices were going to go up. So you didn't account for higher prices and put extra money in at the time of the Springtown meeting?
We weren't aware of the Surge's bids until the fiscal year began, or a little before that, sorry. I don't know the
But after
exact,
town meeting.
right around town meeting.
So at that point, Sandra, the bids weren't in. And so that was something that Sean wasn't able to go through to realize before our last town meeting.
How much did we apply to this appropriation at the Springtown meeting?
In the budget, it was, we
Yes.
had 140,000 for chemicals.
And that was going to take us for how long?
1 year. In fiscal year 22, we spent 137,500 in chemicals.
Right. So basically what you're telling me is you're basically putting almost 300,000 into chemicals for the water system.
Correct,
For-
290,000
Right, for 1 year.
for 1 year.
And
Costs
so
have
it's,
more than doubled.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Costs have more than doubled, Sandy.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that answers my question, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
thank you, Sean.
That is it for now, Kevin, for questions.
Having an issue with the PowerPoint. 1 second. Okay, Article 1, Motion 3, and this is what we discussed just a little while ago, the fact that the airport to be put from 75,000 from their retained earnings, and this would go into their retained earnings into their reserve fund, and they were asking for this to go particularly to building maintenance for their reserve for 75,000. The topic of Article 2 was for any unpaid bills for previous years, and we'll be passing that over because we don't have any, which is great. And moving on to Article 3 and Article 4. These are for what I had referred to as the 5-year revaluation. We put aside dollars every year, so it's a larger dollar amount when we go through. And so we put $10,000 a year approximately for this item for the 5-year revaluation of properties as required by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts every 5 years. So we're asking annually, like we do, for $10,000 for this article number 3. And also in article number 4 would be money going towards the 10-year cyclical inspection, which is for $60,000. Sharon, any hands raised?
No.
And if we don't see any hands raised, Sharon, you can just let me know, and then I'll move forward, okay?
Excellent.
Perfect. Article 5, Motion 1. These were 2 of the items that we had talked about. One regarding the self-contained breathing apparatus for the fire department for all of our members in the amount of $370,000, as well as the school department, as you heard from Superintendent Murphy, for the Robinson Playground final design to purchase the equipment and for underground tank removal for $228,500 for a total of $598,000.
Kevin, we have a question.
Yes.
Go ahead, Sandy.
Thank you. Why are the 2 articles that are being put together from 2 totally different departments? I know that you can freely and legally move money within a department, but why does this one article take 2 different geometrically opposed sources and put them together in one article? Do you have intra-departmental money movement?
No, so specifically, if you look on the next page for motion 1, the reason why this is combined into one is because it's being asked for a transfer from free cash. So the transfer from free cash, the transfer from the retained earnings, we've put the projects together. So this is only going into $370,000 for the fire department for the self-contained breathing apparatus, and that's for Chief DeRosiers. And for the school department, in a separate budget item for the school, would be $228,503, but they're both being funded from retained from free cash, and so that's why they're lumped together for the $2 amounts that come to a total of $598,503. And as per the actual town meeting warrant packet, Article 5 has to do with capital projects.
Well,
So
a question.
Article 1 is for general government. Motion 1 is for general government. Motion 2 is for water. Motion 3 is for sewer in the respective funds.
Okay, if there is money that is left over from Article 5, Motion 1, where is that going to go?
So if there happened to be, let's say that the air packs for the fire department, right? And say they came in at 360,000. If there's $10,000 left, then that would be returned back to the general fund when it's finished.
Thank you.
And Kevin, we have one more question. Go ahead, Steve. Steve Schoenfeld. Wait, oh, there you go.
Thanks. Not that I like to dig this up, no pun intended. But have we tested the area around that tank in case there's any issues?
That also contains some dollars that have been allocated for by the school department inside that dollar amount. So
Okay.
that area will be tested for remediation purposes as well, but there's no, at this point in time, even though that they're set aside for some dollars for potentially deal with that issue, that has not been tested to date, but they have isolated some funding. Matt Jocks from the school department put that together with the assistant superintendent for this presentation.
Well, it's too bad we can't have kids in the room because they'd be cheering for this. So, including my sons. Thank you.
Great. So for motion 2, for the items that we had talked about, hold on one second. Motion 2 is for the water meters and water readers for 60,000. And again, this comes from the water department's its own retained earnings, as well as a replacement pickup truck for 45,000. Article 5, Motion 3. This is for the annual allocation that's made of $200,000 from the retained earnings from the sewer enterprise fund. And this is for sewer collection system improvements for cleaning and the maintenance and relining of sewer mains throughout the town. And that's the language for the 200,000.
Kevin, we do have a question. Go ahead, Sandra.
Okay, great.
How much was appropriated for this in May?
There was nothing appropriated for this in May. We do this out of retained earnings, which means when our free cash is certified and the retained earnings are certified, which happens typically in the September, October timeframe, the annual dollar amounts that we ask for are at fall town meeting, not annual.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Moving on for Article 6, it's asking that $450,000 be transferred from the town's free cash to the Finance Committee Reserve Fund for transfer to make sure that there's ample dollars for the remaining of fiscal 23. Article 7, it's moving that $700,000 be transferred, as previously talked about at the beginning of the presentation, from retained earnings to the Sewer Reserve Fund for transfer. And we'll also see the same thing being requested a little bit differently in Article 8, and that's going to be from the water retained earnings to the Water Reserve Fund for transfer. And those are both, in addition to the town's reserves, are managed by the Finance Committee.
We have a question from Sandra Levine.
Sure.
Oh, did you put your up? Do you still have a question, Sandra?
But yes, I have a question still, but
Okay.
it was for Article 6. You went faster than I could get my hand raised. Can you tell me, or at least tell the people that are listening, what the Finance Committee Reserve Fund is used for?
Sure. So anything for the reserve fund for transfer on water, sewer, or the town's reserve fund for transfer, anything that's unanticipated or unforeseen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Articles 9 and 10 for this town meeting will be passed over because they're items that are not needed. Article 11, as we reviewed a little bit earlier in the presentation, prior to Teresa Murphy coming on board tonight, was to talk about the creation of a new stabilization fund. And this is to be able to reserve the 1.4 million that will be coming over the next 16 to 17 years as part of the Attorney General's settlement of the opioid epidemic lawsuit against opioid manufacturers and distributors. And again, this is something that comes to all 351 cities and towns. And the next article, in Article 12, is the dollar amount specifically as it relates to putting dollars into that fund, which is 301,000, and that's the dollars that the town just received as part of that settlement. In addition to a request for $280,000 that would be going towards our other post-employment benefits, as you may recall, for the future retiree cost for health insurance that will be coming at some point in the future, and it'll be added to the 11 million that we already have. And then also the uncompensated absences that we need to fund, estimated through the end of the year of 196,000. And these are all coming from free cash. Article 13 is asking to be able to pay down some of our existing debt. So this is things that we had paid for. We have a loan out there for temporarily, and we're going to pay it off. And this is in regards to debt service for the special education bus for the school department, snowplow vehicle for the school department, as well as the police cruiser replacements loans. And so this would pay them off in their entirety. Always a good thing to pay down debt whenever applicable. Article 14 is requesting that $200,000 be transferred from the Water Department Enterprise Fund retained earnings and to pay down its debt that was issued for a backhoe and for the water meter reader loans. And so temporarily we made funding available for those at a previous town meeting. This would go through and to pay them off. Article 15 is requesting that $125,000 be transferred to be spent by the town manager with the Mansfield School Committee. And this is in regards to the schematic design and the required construction documents for the Qualters Middle School boiler and hot water system replacement that will be continuing under an MSBA program as described by the superintendent. And then following, of course, Article 16, which the superintendent spoke to, which is the dollar amount for the project budget as approved by Mass School Building Authority for $1.834 million. And that's to pay the costs associated with the Mansfield High School boiler replacement hot water system project, which is eligible for 52.89% reimbursement.
Kevin, we have a question. Sandra, did you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Does this mean with Article 16 anyway, that there will be no other money that the town will have to raise for these projects, and any balance to be paid will be coming from the reimbursement from state?
So how this process works is that the Mass School Building Authority makes you appropriate, which this article does, and it's asking for the authorization for the purpose of paying for the costs associated with this project. And that project budget cost with MSBA is $1.834380 million. By issuing this loan order, it authorizes the town with approval of the school committee and the superintendent to use those funds to be able to pay the costs associated with the project. Now, while the loan order is for $1.834 million, the town will not borrow $1.834 million. The town will only borrow its non-matching share from the state. So in the end, we will only borrow what's not reimbursed by Mass School Building Authority. So all costs that are related and incidental thereto will be reimbursed 52.89%. The remaining percentage that's not matched is what will be borrowed in the end. That dollar amount in the end, once that we receive project closeout documents that we work very closely with the school superintendent and a superintendent for finance, once that gets to the point where we do a budget closeout, that's when we will then go through and to bond a final dollar amount, just like we did with the previous curtain wall projects and window replacements for the schools in the past. I hope I've made that clear.
Well, I think it's clear. Basically, you're answering yes to my question that other than incidentals, perhaps, once the state has reimbursed us for their 51 point whatever percentage, Mansfield will not be asked to put forth any further money toward this Article 16 purchase of the the high school boiler and whatever else. I think that was basically it, wasn't it?
And I want to make sure, Sandra, that you understand that this is a loan order. This is not cash. So the town will have to make a debt payment in the future of the portion of this $1.8 million loan order. So let's just say it's an easy 50% and an easy 1.8 million. And the town, when it goes to borrow the $900,000 that it needs at some point, we will have to put that in the budget for debt payments moving forward. So this is a loan order just like any loan order that's been done in the past. There's nothing different with this loan order than anything else, that by approving a loan order, just like if you were to get a mortgage on your own property, you would then have to pay the associated principal and interest payments when it's appropriate. But what I'm just simply explaining, while this is a $1.8 million loan order, the state's approximately given 50%, we will only borrow about $900,000 in the end.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
I understand it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And as the school superintendent mentions for Article 17, this would be asked to be able to enter in for school technology contracts beginning for a period in excess of 3 years. Mass General Law only requires you to do agreements for 3 years unless we go through to do something different, which this does. And as the superintendent explained, this would be not to exceed 6 years in length. Sharon?
We have no questions at this time.
Thank you. Article 18, this is an annual article that we do at fall town meeting every year. And this is from the 25 cents per ride from Uber and Lyft rides that comes back to the town. And that is allowed to then be used towards our regular Chapter 90 costs in the town of Mansfield. So this is dollars coming to the town from the state, collected from every Uber and Lyft ride sharing service. And this year, that amount and comes to a total of $3,188.40.
There are no questions.
Great. So for Article 19, great. This is an opportunity to be able to go through and to discuss particular easements. This is for a drainage easement. And so you can see here on the screen, this is for real property on the westerly side of Mill Street, Assessors Map 3548, for the purpose of construction, installation, replacement or repairing, operation and maintenance of a drainage system and structures and drain lines, as well as any facilities such as water to flow from the westerly side of Mill Street to this plan depicted on the next page. So if the town engineer and the DPW director wanted to come on and just explain this simply, that would be fantastic as we go through the next couple of articles. Hi again, Josh. I know Rick Al's with us tonight too. There he is. Hey, Rick.
Hi all.
So could you just briefly explain this project, what we're putting through for Article 19 here for what you see on the screen?
Sure, this is an agreement made with Assessors Map 35 Lot 48 for the reconstruction of East Street drainage. So we got a couple of catch basins being proposed with manholes at the intersection of East and Mill that ultimately go down this drainage easement on this abutting property who's agreed with this access and drainage easement to flow to the wetlands. So this is going to help alleviate any ponding that is currently happening on this East Street.
Okay, excellent. And if you guys can stay on the screen for the next couple, that'd be really fantastic. So thank you. Sharon, anyone?
There are no questions.
Seeing none, we'll move on to Article 20. Again, this is for the same type of purposes for Rick and Josh. If you want to talk about this particularly, has to do with about a lot for 45,000 square feet of what we're looking at here. This is a plan that was designed for access and drainage easement. And this is based upon a book and page of 18973. So Rick, can you describe this one for us?
Sure, once again, this is for the reconstruction of Stearns Avenue, which will be going out for bid come the spring. So this easement is required for the improvement project. The town's drainage system within the right-of-way needs the outlet to the nearby wetland through private property in order to prevent flooding within the roadway. So this is on a borderline of the town of Easton and Mansfield Conservation, which I'm currently working through.
All right, beautiful. Yeah, that's the purple line we see on the right-hand side of the screen. Town of Mansfield, Town of Easton. Perfect. Sharon?
There are no questions.
Okay. And again, going on for Article 21, it's another project that the town is embarking on. And again, this is also for Stearns Ave. This is book 128, page 61. And Rick, if you can talk about this one for us.
So once again, this easement's needed because there's existing flow that sheet flows into this intersection of Stearns Avenue, which the previous easement, this is the inlet from the outlet that was being proposed earlier. So this is going to be a proposed pond, like a settling basin, that's going to be collected into the drainage system, which then outlets to the previous easement that was agreed upon.
And that helps with underground recharge before it goes into the drainage system, right?
What's that? I'm sorry, Kevin?
That just helps with the drainage system to be able to do some underground recharge before it goes through the system.
Correct. It's going to collect the runoff from the nearby wetland. Instead of sheet flowing into the existing roadway, it'll collect into this triangle shaped easement, which would be like a detention pond, and then outlet underground.
Exactly. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon?
There are no questions.
Similarly, for the next article, this is another project that you folks are working on as it relates to William Street, and this is for a 20-foot access and drainage permanent easement. So, Rick, if you'd like to explore and explain that for us, that would be fantastic.
Sure, very similar to the previous projects. This is located on William Street between Jewel Street and Tremont. So we have an existing low spot that sheet flows over land that erodes the road. And previously, what we've constructed is catch basin and drain manhole. And subject to the acceptance of this easement through town meeting, this will be piped to the nearby wetland. And then again, it's already been approved through conservation. So we're just waiting for the approval through town meeting on this.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Rick. And, you know, for all the projects, just for the public to know, whether it's William Street or whether it's Stearns Avenue or any of our streets that are public ways, when we come in to do a reconstruction of an area, we try to make it better than where we found it. And I think that's the goal of this, right, gentlemen?
Absolutely.
Exactly. So for Article 23, Josh, I know, and Rick too, but we've been intimately involved with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and they're going to be replacing the Balcombe Street Bridge. So at 250 and 296 Balcombe Street, if you could just give us a little bit of a discussion in regards to Article 23. I know it's a big project coming up. This is all the legal language that's required for what it does. But if you guys can kind of talk about that a little bit, you can see here for these parcel numbers, most of these, from what I understand, gentlemen, except for the last two that are going to be on the following page, are all the water department for the city of Attleboro's property that it owns in Mansfield, correct?
That's correct. So the Balcombe Street Bridge project is slated to begin early summer next year, and the road closure will be in place for approximately a year. And it's fully funded by the state. They're paying for all the police details. They're doing all the work here. So this article here specifically is the legal language that gives the select board the authority to receive as donation or accept as an eminent domain temporary and permanent easements across lands. We have one Mansfield resident here that's at 296 Balcombe Street, and then the remainder of the parcels at 250 Balcombe Street are owned by the city of Attleboro.
Yes, and these are the ones that are listed right here on the screen. So again, just backing up here, the first page here on this screen is all City of Attleboro Water Department, and on this page as well until the last two. And as Josh stated, the fact that this is 100% paid by for the construction of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which we're very thankful for, which is fantastic. And again, it's going to leave the area better than where we certainly found it from where it is today, and make the necessary improvements with that. And I thank the both of you for your help with that project. And while we have put out some public information on well in a year in advance of this project, I know that you're working on the William Street improvements and the drainage to get ready so we can make sure that that road's in tip-top shape while we divert traffic that way temporarily while the bridge is under construction. But we look forward to a real great completion on this project. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay, so for Rick and Josh, I think you're all set now. And we
We
have
do have a
Article-
question,
Oh,
Kevin,
I'm sorry.
on Article 23.
Yep, let me
Go
back.
ahead,
Thank
Sandra.
I do have a question. Why is the Balcombe Street Bridge being redone? I thought, according to what was said earlier, the Balcombe Street Bridge was too big for the service that was needed. And after that project, the industrial project, closed and went away, I didn't understand why the bridge needed to be rebuilt.
Yeah,
It
so the
certainly
bridge is
wasn't-
actually
It
structurally
wasn't going
deficient
to have
right
to
now.
take, it wasn't going to have to take any of the traffic that industrial project would have been presenting. So I guess I'll be quiet and listen for an answer.
Sure. So unfortunately, you must have missed the select board meetings of which Mr. Renke and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts gave some updates on as it related to this bridge project, which has nothing to do with any other potential development in the town. This bridge is structurally deficient. It needs to be replaced. There's actually a great PowerPoint presentation in video on the state's presentation. I will ask Josh, you can communicate with Carrie in my office, Josh, and you can send a copy of that PowerPoint presentation to Sandra. So she actually has a copy of that and she can review that for more specific detail on the needs of the bridge reports that show that it's deficient, and the state's plans for the project. And so, Sandra, I hope at that point it'll be more clear for you, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And yes, I guess, Mr. Renke, I did miss that particular meeting. I don't miss too many, but I didn't make that one. So thank you very much for taking the time and making the effort.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item for Article 24 is a presentation by Jack Jacoby. I know there's also Ed Valenzola on our program this evening, as well as Marco Crugnali. And at this point, gentlemen, if you could please turn your cameras on and you can introduce yourself with your microphones on as well. That'll be fantastic. I saw Jack come up and Jack went away for a minute, Ed. I'm sure he'll be back in a second. But once we can get everybody on the screen, that'll be great. And this is in regards to the citizens petition for an additional all alcohol sales at Reservoir Landing. So I'll let all of you go through and introduce yourselves to those who may be watching tonight. And then I will scroll through your presentation. When you just say next slide, I'll do that for you. And then we can be able to continue to the end, and then we'll ask if there's any questions. So Jack, I'll throw it over to you right now.
Thank you. My name is Jack Jacoby. I'm an attorney with offices in Attleboro. I represent Reservoir Landing. Ed?
Thank you. Ed Valenzola. I'm an attorney with Valenzola Law Group in Mansfield. I represent the prospective tenant that would be operating a 5,000 square foot food mart and liquor store at this location if the additional license is issued.
Hi, Marco Crignali with Crignali Properties. I own Reservoir Landing, where the site is located.
So thank you for the opportunity. If we could just go back to the first one, Kevin. So this is the artist's rendition of what the development would look like when it was finished. This development is right at the beginning of Reservoir Street. At the back, you'll see the Fairfield Inn Hotel that exists. Over on the left is the medical office building that exists. The building right in the middle, we don't have a tenant for, so that has not been built yet. But the building on the right side contains an Aroma Joe's, and it is the proposed location of Mr. Patel's convenience liquor store. So if you go to the second one, so at the bottom right there, at the right of the entrance driveway where the cursor is now, you will see the building where Aroma Joe's is and where we would locate the tenant. And if you can go to the third slide, that is the building under construction to allow those two uses. So let me just explain to you that first of all, many of you probably know Marco Crignali. He is a resident of town and has developed a number of projects within town. The proposed tenant, Dinesh Patel, is also a resident. And what Marco is facing right now is what is facing most commercial landlords throughout the country, especially here in Massachusetts, which is that Amazon has changed the brick and mortar landscape for the foreseeable future. It is very difficult to get tenants right now. Mostly it's medical uses and restaurants. And so the fact that Mr. Patel is willing to come in and be a tenant for 5,000 square feet is absolutely outstanding, and we're looking forward to having him. The convenience store would also have a full liquor license. And you may say, what does all this have to do with the town of Mansfield? Well, here's the short answer. Liquor licenses are granted by the state based on population, and the legislature retains one key power, which is that they can increase that number by a special act of the legislature without having to wait for the town's population to grow. The proposal that we're making here is that the town, in essence, petition the legislature to grant one more license. Now, that license would be specific to this site alone and to this user alone, so it wouldn't be generally throughout the town. What we would, excuse me, somebody, and so what we are asking is that the town agree to ask the legislature to allow this to occur. The convenience store would serve, and liquor store would serve a side of town where there is currently, which is underserved. There is no liquor store on that side. There is no convenience store on that side. It is also, there's an over 55 development fairly close across the street. And so this would be an opportunity for people to pick up the loaf of bread, the gallon of milk, as well as to purchase beer, wine, or spirits. If you're wondering what the process is, this is just the first step. In the event that the town meeting agrees with this, it then would go to the legislature. If the legislature agreed, it would then come back to the town because we would have to apply to the licensing board for the license for this site and meet all of the standards required for that. And then from there, it would go to the State Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission for their approval. So this is the first of really 4 steps that we're asking you to take. We believe that this will be a win-win situation. There will be additional taxes that will be generated for the town. The residents on that side of town will not have to travel as far to purchase the items that will be sold. And so therefore, we are asking your help in taking this first step and allowing the convenience/liquor store to be established at this location. Thank you. Ed, I don't know if you have anything. Well, let me add what our next slide is, if I could, Kevin. I should have said that this will create 5 to 7 jobs in town. And that I understand that the select board has voted 5-0 in favor of it. And also we have a letter from the Tri-Town Chamber of Commerce supporting this. And we also understand that the Aroma Joe's owner is also very anxious in making sure that the shopping center is fully developed and is in support of this. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Are there any questions for the proponents for Article 24 at this point? Ed?
Kevin, may I? Yeah, if I may, please. So I represent the prospective tenant. We have entered into a lease that's subject to and contingent upon issuance of this license. So the Aroma Joe's, I will be picking up a letter from the franchisee. I've spoken with them several times, met with him. And, you know, if you go by that building now, it's other than the Aroma Joe's, there's nothing there. I understand the challenges of leasing retail space these days. In addition to Amazon, you know, this center was permitted well before COVID and inflation. And so those are additional factors that have come into play and made it difficult to rent these spaces. I think Marco had a restaurant, maybe a daycare or some other uses at one point that went away. So, you know, I think this helps the town, you know, is assisting our retail locations to try to get some occupancy. This isn't the only location that has some vacancy. So I will be providing a letter Thursday night from Aroma Joe's. The franchisee has written a letter in support. As Jack pointed out, there will be 5 to 7 additional jobs. There's nothing on that side of 495. You know, you've got Reservoir Street. If you go up to a Norton, you know, the supermarket closed, Roach Brothers. So this will provide a benefit to the people on that side of Mansfield, on the other side of 495. Dinesh Patel is a resident of town. He's actually my neighbor, and you know, has experience, you know, in this type of business, and you know, he's looking forward to hopefully opening there and being successful.
Excellent. Thank you, Ed. Are there any questions for the proponents for Article 24? Now
Yes.
will be the time to ask.
Yeah, we do have Sandra Levy. Go ahead, Sandra.
Thank you. Who will own the land and the building?
It will be owned by Reservoir Landing LLC that Marco Crugnali is the principal of. And the tenant, Dinesh Patel, will enter into a fairly long-term lease.
Okay, then Mr. Patel is going to be the owner of the business.
That is correct. Mr. Krugnali will own the land, Mr. Patel will own the business.
Would Mr.
We are-
Patel,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, we already have entered into a lease, a long-term lease, so that piece is done, but it has a contingency in it that we need to be able to obtain a liquor license in order to make the numbers work. So the lease is in existence and Mr. Patel is the tenant under the lease.
If Mr. Patel decided to move to another location, can he transfer that liquor license with him?
No, it's specific to this location and that's indicated in the petition.
Okay, thank you.
There are no
Sharon,
other
are there any other
questions.
questions?
No other questions.
All right,
Okay.
great.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you Thursday night.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Ed.
Kevin,
Thanks, Marco.
Can I call you
Thank you
now,
all.
Kevin, or can we spend a minute on how to get Jack to speak and move the question?
We're live on TV and we're live on our presentation right now.
Oh,
So Ed, why don't you
all
give
right.
about 15 minutes and give the office a call?
Call you? All right, very good.
Perfect.
Thank you for your
Thanks so
time.
much. Yeah, of course. Good night. So folks, here we are at the end of our virtual town meeting review. We're really happy about the opportunity to be able to go forward and to bring this for you for discussion and consideration on Thursday night this week. I can't believe it's here already. And the fact that we just celebrated Thanksgiving last Thursday, here we are for a special town meeting now, the kicking off for this Thursday night upcoming. So we look forward to the opportunity to seeing you at Mansfield High School this Thursday night, 7 p.m. And we really look forward to the opportunity to do the business at hand for the town and its residents. So at the conclusion of this, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Thanks to our department heads and the petitioners for Article 24. Hope you learned a little bit more tonight and getting ready for town meeting on Thursday, and looking forward to a good and successful meeting. Thank you so much and good night.